everyone, this is the tutorial for putting together my Supergirl bodysuit pattern. This is available in my Etsy store, which is linked below. So this is the pattern. I've already taped it together and now I'm just going to cut out my size in all of the pieces. And this is the template for the logo. I'm using regular scissors to cut out the edges, and then the detailed parts I'm just going to use like a craft knife. Using one of these knife things is definitely the easiest way to do this. And then I've just got my self-healing cutting mat underneath. And then what I'm doing is I'm tracing that template onto my iron-on vinyl. And the way that I'm doing this is the vinyl, the side with like the plastic sheet on it is face down, and then you can see that my template is also face down. And I'm just going to trace all of these little things. There's like friction in between the paper and the matte side of the vinyl, so it just kind of stays in place, and then I'm using my knife to cut all of that out. So I'm making the outer piece yellow and the inner piece will be red as in the actual suit. Here are those two pieces, so you can see that glossy side up, they're like the right way around, and they're just going to be placed like this. So now what I'm doing, so having cut out all of my pieces in spandex, this is my piece A. There is a point along the fold where the bottom of the logo will go, so that's where you're going to place it, and then iron it on. And this is just me trying to peel the plastic up. I'm going really slowly to make sure I don't pull any of it up. And then to put the red piece on, I'm using a sheet of grease-proof paper and ironing on top of that. So doing this will attach the red piece without melting the yellow. And then peeling the plastic off of that too. You can also, if the logo comes like unstuck at all, you can use the grease-proof paper in this method to stick it back down. So now with all my pieces cut out, these are the back pieces here, I'm laying them out so I can see which way up they all need to be, because I'm going to paint all of my fabric. So the fabric the actual suit uses is like screen printed. So I'm going to try and replicate that effect because that fabric's really expensive. So I'm using this slick paint by Tulip, and I'm using a ruler to mark these dots every half an inch apart, alternating on each row as you can see. So I'm doing these dots first, and then I'm going to do the rest of the pattern once it's dry. And also note that I'm using slick paint, not puffy paint, because the puffy paint will be matte when it sets and we want it to be shiny. So now for the lines, so it's basically 2 rows of these long lines, and then following that 2 rows of these shorter lines, and then that pattern just repeats over the entire suit. I find it's a lot easier to do if you do the dots first, as I just did, and then the lines after. And using a ruler is really helpful so that they're all like straight. And I'm doing this over the entire suit. And if you are going to do this, This took me about 15 hours in total to paint all of the fabric, and I did it after the logo, as you can see. So this is what my piece A looks like. Now I'm just lining up the piece B here, so I'm just adding clips. This is probably the hardest part to sew. If you have an overlock or a serger, it's really helpful on this step. If not, I would recommend doing like a basting stitch by hand first before you go in with a sewing machine, because it's quite like a sharp turn, so that will just make it a bit easier. I'm using a lot of clips to hold it in place around the curve as well. And I'm also just starting to pin my arm pieces together, so this is piece G, so you should have 4 of those, and you can just put them together in 2s, and then this is piece H and piece I together. And again, just pinning those like that, so just sewing like 2 together at a time, and then we'll come back to them. And this is the back pieces. So piece D, which is attaching to piece E and then to piece F. So I'm just gonna clip them all together now and sew all of these in one go basically. And I'm gonna use a triple stretch stitch on my machine. You can use a zigzag, I just think this is neater. So that's what I'm doing now. And obviously this is sped up because that stitch takes quite a while. So now what I'm doing is lining up the top part and the bottom part of the sleeve together. I'm not pressing the seam open because the paint on the fabric makes it kind of stick to the machine. It makes it a lot harder to sew, so I'm just making sure that none of that is going to be in contact, but I'm making sure to like line the seams up together so it'll be like a nice cross. And then I'm also taking those back pieces and clipping them together with piece C, and then I'm going to sew that as well, and the same for both sides there. So now with the front and the back all sewn up, I'm going to add the shoulders together. So this is on piece A and piece D. I'm just lining those up, clipping in place, and I'm going to stitch them. So now that that's done, I'm now getting my sleeve and I'm pinning that around the armhole. So note that the sides of the bodysuit and the side seam of the sleeve haven't been sewn up yet. I'm just doing the armhole on each side, and make sure that the sleeve is the right way around. And I'm just pinning all those ready to be sewn. So I've done that, and now I'm going to use a stretch twin needle. So this is my machine setup, 2 spools of red thread. So I'm basically using a straight stitch. I'm putting it on my longest stitch setting. This will create like a stretch stitch, but I'm top stitching over all of those seams that we just did. I'm basically just pulling the fabric apart slightly as I go. And the only seam that I'm not top stitching right now is the one where piece A and piece B meet, and also the one between piece E and piece F, because that'll just be easier to do in one go once the sides are sewn up. Okay, so now it's time to do the sides up. So you can see all the top stitching on here, and that I've left those two seams that I was talking about. So to sew the side seams up, you're going to fold it over like this. So right sides together, pinning the sides of the bodysuit up. And then you're going to continue that over the armpit and down the sleeve. So this is going to be sewn in like one straight line. And now that that's done, we can go back to the red top stitching down this seam here that's created between pieces A and B, and it continues onto the back piece, as you can see, this line here. It's just easier to do this in one go so that the seam lines up properly. And so now what I'm doing is I'm cutting out some strips of iron-on interfacing that are about the length of my zipper. This is just to stabilise the seam basically, so the zipper when you insert it won't have like a ripple, like it'll lie flat. So here I am, I'm just ironing it onto the opening in the back on both sides. And now I'm taking my invisible zipper and I'm just going to line it up along this seam, clip it in, and then I'll sew it in with my invisible zipper foot on each side. And then close up the bottom of the seam. So this is just me sewing that in. So now what I'm doing to finish off like the leg holes, which isn't a circle at this point, so like the flap on the crotch should still be open, but I'm taking swimwear elastic and I'm basically creating a rolled hem which the elastic sits inside of, and then I'm just stitching over that with my stretch stitch just to finish them off. To finish off the ends of the sleeves and also the thumb holes, I'm just doing a narrow zigzag stitch over it. You don't have to do this if you cut it neatly enough, but I just think it helps the look of it. And just whilst I'm here, I'm also gonna hem the flaps at the bottom. So the one on the bottom of piece A and also piece C, I'm just folding it over once and then stitching that in place. And now what I'm doing, so this is sort of a choice. I'm putting like snaps on these so that the bottom, the flap, like it is a flap, it'll open, just for wearing it to a con. Just makes it easier really. And I've chosen these blue ones just so they're a bit more hidden. But you can see that that just opens and closes really easily. And now I'm cutting out a 1-inch wide strip of this red spandex. I'm basically just cutting it as like the entire width of this piece, which is like a meter long. It doesn't need to be that long, but just in case. And I'm taking this elastic cord. So this is cord, it's not like flat elastic, but it's stretchy as you can see. And I'm going to use this to make some stretch piping. So I'm using my invisible zipper foot and my stretch stitch again. And I'm just making this piping. And now what I'm doing is I'm like pinning that piping to the neckline of the suit, and I'm folding it over at the edges where it meets the zipper, so that it has like it's not just leaving a raw edge there. And I'm going to sew that in again with the invisible zipper foot, just getting as close as I can to the actual elastic. And I'm doing that entirely around the neckline. And now to finish that off, I've folded the piping inwards so all the raw edges are contained, and then I'm doing a stretch stitch like as a top stitch just to hold it in place. I also cut off the excess seam allowance. And that's it. So this is a look of the finished bodysuit. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. I really like how the paint ended up looking. And then here it is with like the rest of the outfit, so the skirt, the belt and the cape. So thank you for watching, and please let me know what you think. Thank you.